We are here today with Steve Dutner, the Libertarian nominee for Secretary of State. We appreciate you being here today.
Thank you very much.
I invite you to start by providing an opening statement as to why you're running for office and why you think you're the best candidate for the office.
Sure. My name is Steve Dutner, Libertarian candidate for Secretary of State. I've been involved in politics for approximately 20 years now as a Libertarian. I got active in the Fox Valley Libertarians, which handled the Kane County region in Illinois. Then got involved in the DuPage Libertarians, became the vice chair there, involved with the DeKalb Libertarians. I've been fighting against tax increases for the majority of my time in politics. I also participated in anti-war movements, drug legalization movements. I've been the campaign coordinator for multiple campaigns, Julie Fox for comptroller, Claire Ball for comptroller, and Kent McMillan in the last election. Currently, I'm on the state organizing committee for the Libertarian Party of Illinois, which means I'm involved in the decision-making process. So that's a little bit of my political background.
Well, if we could start, I guess, explain why the Libertarian Party attracted you and why you became a member of that.
The Libertarian Party attracted me because it's all your freedoms all the time. I was raised in a very conservative household with my parents, and I also had some extremely liberal grandparents. So I got the perspective from both of them where I cared not only about the fiscal issues, but also the social issues that were involved. As a Libertarian, we don't pick and choose what your freedoms are. We believe in all your freedoms all the time. So I have the unique position being a Libertarian and where I don't have to choose between a team, whether it be a Democrat or a Republican. I work on basically what I believe the citizens of Illinois need and not what a special interest would be through either of those parties.
And what about the Secretary of State's office appeals to you?
The Secretary of State's office appeals to me mainly because it's the biggest office in the state of Illinois. It's got the highest budget of $417 million, and there's a lot involved in it that people don't realize. I got interested in the Secretary of State's office after the last run in 2014 with our candidate, Chris Michael. I saw a lot of things in that office that appealed to me. I'm an avid reader. It's in charge of the library system. Driver services I've always thought could be improved upon. So I started to talk to people in the party and in the community, and they all thought that I would be, good running for office. I have ideas to reduce the budget and save money, and I have ideas that I don't think anyone else has mentioned that will bring us into the 21st century.
And I do have questions about some of those specifics on your
Sure.
campaign website we're going to get into. But if you could start, the current Secretary of State, Jesse White, has been in office since 1999. How would you rate the job he's done?
I would actually, I would give it probably a B. I think overall that he's done well. I would like to see more progression in the office, some changes, things that are different from, the same old that they've been. I think after 20 years being the longest serving Secretary of State in the history of Illinois, that things have just kind of gone by. They've just kind of gone by, and he's initiated different types of legislation that has worked, and he's done things like pushed for advertising on registration forms, which I'd like to go even further with. So overall, I would say I would give him a B. I do think it's time for a change, though, because other states are doing things differently with driver services that I think would definitely benefit Illinois.
I guess let's start there then. What are these other services you're seeing in other states?
Well, there's 18 other states that have privatized or outsourced the driver services to some extent. North Carolina has been the most successful. It's reduced the average transaction cost by $6. That itself, that state is not completely privatized or outsourced. So I want to look over the different models that had. Some of the other states that didn't work so well, like Arizona, Nevada was pondering it, and they decided at the last moment not to do it. So I want to analyze what's worked in the 18 states that have privatized versus those that have not worked, and see how I can apply a similar model to Illinois. So with driver services, that would entail opening up for insurance companies to offer competing services against each other. Basically, you would open up the market to insurance companies as long as they follow, obviously, special rules that would pertain to getting your license registration and some of the automatic forms, that they'll be able to compete. And that will ensure that the best drivers are on the road, because they'll only want to insure the best drivers. And if they're issuing the licenses too, if someone's an unsafe driver, then they'll be paying obviously higher fees, which would encourage them to drive better. Another big part of automating the process with them is to do a little bit more with kiosks on things like college campuses, grocery stores, libraries. We currently have mobile units that go around the state to help people out, but I visited a lot of college campuses recently in Champaign and Springfield and Northern, and they all say that they would like it a little bit more convenient, something permanent on campus where they can get some of their basic registration done. And then most importantly, my third thing that I want to do with the Secretary of State's office is protect your privacy. With the hacking of Equifax, I've talked to people. They're definitely concerned about identity theft going on through the office. I was a little concerned that Mr. White did not understand what PCI compliance is. A lot of corporations, including the one that I work with, have gone that way. Basically what it is it's payment card industry, which protects your financial information. You can't take pictures in the office. You can't do anything else. I would like to see that instituted. I think that'll help with privacy. Also, there's a technology called air gap technology. And with air gap technology, you basically have a system that's not set up to log into the internet at no time is it ever connected. So you'll have a base to go back to in case someone hacks or information's changed. You'll still have that permanent file that can never be touched. So I definitely think some of these things could improve identity theft and security in the office.
For these kiosks, what would I be able to go do?
You would be able to do your basic license and registration stuff, which you can do at a currency exchange. However, I'm looking to do this more at a reduced rate. It's going to be funded with advertising. The advertising that was passed by the allowance of advertising passed in House Bill 394 was kind of particular on who can advertise. It left out industries like insurance industries, and most importantly, that as a libertarian bugs me, is they left out the medical marijuana industry from advertising. I see that as a legitimate industry. In the next few years, it is going to be completely legalized. Claire Ball in 2014 had a lawsuit against Madigan, Claire versus Ball versus Madigan, where they won a case where medical marijuana dispensaries can now contribute to political campaigns. So I've talked with that community appearing at fairs and different types of events, and it's something as growing that could help. They could help fund things on the kiosk. So opening up advertising with additional companies and thinking more local too. Like if you're in, say, Elgin, Illinois, you have something that maybe is helping out the community with advertising. Maybe you have Bob's hardware store or something. So all this will kind of fund itself and also help I would hope to reduce fees by all this happening too.
Just going back to the advertising on through the Secretary of State forms, I guess. You don't think there should be any limitations on who can advertise for that?
Well,
or I guess and we'll be
Sure.
upfront that we editorialized against that. We did not think that was a good move
Sure.
to state. So where would you see the limitations on who or who could not advertise on these things?
I would like to look and see how they decided certain things. I don't understand, like the ones that they brought up with insurance companies. I mean, I see kind of like an anti-insurance movement going on in this country because of healthcare costs and everything else, and I have a feeling that might have influenced it. Medical marijuana is quite, a debatable topic here in Illinois, and it's been kind of pushed down. But now, especially since Ronner did sign off on the bill for prescriptions in place of opiates to use medical marijuana instead, this is something that's going to be a major industry in this state, and it helps fund the state through the medical marijuana community. And once we legalize marijuana itself, that's going to help fund things too. So I just think we need to maybe analyze a little bit better why we're picking and choosing. I don't like that crony capitalism type of model where government picks and chooses who's going to get what contract. So I would like to kind of take a look at that and see what's holding us up from allowing even more different types of companies from advertising.
I guess you could have arguments that if it's something related to driving and having an insurance company could be a conflict of interest, and it would be a favoritism toward one company over another. Would you not agree with that assessment?
Well, it can be, and I think that's where especially when you're doing the privatization, you're having competing insurance companies. So there might be an advantage for one insurance company that might be more popular in a particular area to do the advertising. They're going to make whatever is the best business sense for themselves. So it's not like I'm going to hold back, like allowing or picking and choosing on this. I might have like an independent board that's separate from government, help give advice or recommendations for that. But I see with the competition that, and it's going to be for different types of insurance too. So people are going to be looking for the economy level. They're going to be looking for the mid-grade level and then the higher level, and it's all going to depend on that. So I would see it being advantageous for the insurance companies that are helping maybe the poor and those with bad driving records to advertise, because that is going to bring in money for them. It'll bring in money through the advertising to help them fund putting out licenses and things like that, and also they'll be responsible for driver's tests. So I don't want to pick and choose the insurance companies. I think that we need to have a kind of an independent model where government is out of the situation.
You mentioned you talked about privatizing the Illinois Driver Services Department. Your campaign website said you'd want to do it within 4 years of being elected.
Yes.
Talk us through how
Sure.
this happens. You get elected, you take office
Sure.
in January.
Yeah.
How are we?
Sure. First year is when I'm analyzing the contracts. I've been studying right now different kiosk prices. There's bulk purchases. So the first year would be kind of a preparation for all of it, to look into the contracts that I can get with the insurance companies. And basically it's kind of like an exploratory year where we look into the different options that we can go forth in. The second year is when I would like to start initiating those contracts with the kiosks and the advertising to get those out. As we're pulling away and doing that, then we start to get into the insurance company's involvement, which will be basically through year 3 and 4. At the end of year 4 is when I want to kind of take a look and see what IDOT will be able to absorb at that time, because we might be at that point, we may not be at that point where they can take over some of the functions. But the 4-year process is basically, if I were to leave after 4 years, we'd already be on the path to go ahead and complete it. Might not be entirely completed, but the process will be in effect where that's basically the road we're going to go down.
Okay. Why do you think privatization is a better deal for taxpayers than still having the Secretary of State's office run it?
Well, I think it's better for the taxpayers because the 18 states showed that it was better for the taxpayers. 18 states did it with bipartisan support. With reducing transactions, especially since Illinois does have high transactional fees, a lot of the fees that go through the Secretary of State's office for different types of documentation are high. Thankfully, they brought down the LLC cost, and I'd like to still see that continue to go down. But I definitely think that that's based on the models that already exist, especially in North Carolina, that this is something that would benefit the taxpayers. They're looking for a break. And obviously the way government works is, sure, I can cut that, but does that mean that they're still going to have my budget as high as it is? So I would have to kind of go back and forth with the Department of Legislative Affairs to say, don't put this in my budget or take this out of the budget. Because in talking with other people at the Secretary of State's office, especially Mr. White, is you're thrown all this stuff in your budget and you didn't ask for it. The difference is, I think, between me and him is I definitely would put up a stink about not needing things like $1,200 for a turkey habitat. I mean, why is it absolutely necessary? And he didn't seem to even know about that fund when we were in our previous debate. So I think we need to look at grants and funds that are not pertaining to library services or to the office directly and ask why they're being put through the office of the Secretary of State.
Okay. Another priority of yours I saw is to reduce spending by eliminating redundant services.
Yes.
So which services do you find redundant?
The main service that I find redundant is actually the Secretary of State Police. In my understanding, there's a total of 11 different state police agencies in Illinois, and I don't see why we need to enforce the same rules that don't necessarily pertain to the Secretary of State's office. So I would like to first cut out like where there's duplication in their roles. There's also been.
Can you give us an example of where you see that duplication?
Well, there's some. I mean, they'll pull over people for tickets. They'll pull people over for basically similar things on law enforcement. I mean, they do the drinking and driving, but I just see that the state police does this already. The Secretary of State Police should be looking into fraud investigations or identity theft. The main reason I say this, especially with the Secretary of State's Police, is earlier on in my campaign email was hacked. It was sent to Mr. White's office with some very racist things said in it, basically wishing him death. And so the Secretary of State's Police showed up to my house the very next day, knowing that it wasn't me, but basically asking who it was, if I had any ideas who it was. Well, the very next day after that, I called them to find out where they were at with the investigation, and they said, "I'm sorry, we have to close your case. We don't have the resources." Well, this office is responsible for all this private information. If this could happen and there's no way for them to investigate that, then it's wide open for people to take. I mean, we need to secure these documents.
I also saw a kind of similar area on your website there that you wanted to get rid of the front license plate requirement.
Yes, I was surprised of how much of a demand that was around the state of Illinois.
Really?
Originally, I didn't even think about it. So I went and I did some research, and you would save $800,000 a year by eliminating the front license plate requirement. Many other states don't have it. It's kind of split throughout the country, but many of the other states don't have it. I think it would help the car enthusiasts. I believe that not only will it save money, but well, that's the main thing, is saving money. $800,000 a year, I think, is the big thing. It'll satisfy the car enthusiasts. It'll save the office money that can therefore be used for something else.
Have you talked at all with law enforcement communities or organizations about that? Because police officers, I know they like that front plate.
Of course, yeah, of course.
I mean, if you're looking for a certain car, you now have two chances to see
Yeah,
if it's the right
yeah. And most police officers do want the front plate. Okay. It's more what the citizens want, which is the back plate. Other police officers in other states where it's not necessary have done fine. Now that we're spied on by red light cams and everything else, everything is pretty much documented anyway, and pictures are taken, and everything is recorded now with cops too, which can be a good or a bad thing. So no, I just see the overall, we don't need extreme monitoring. I think by having the back license plate alone, that's more than sufficient.
If I could go back when we were talking about, you said something along the lines of the amount of information and private information that this office is responsible for. Do you think it's secure now?
Well, I'm not sure. I've heard from Secretary of State employees that they could be disgruntled employees, but they just say it's just wide open, and disgruntled employees could easily get the information. Like I said, there's no PCI compliance in the office. It leaves it wide open for someone who's just ticked off to go and steal someone's information. And then just seeing Equifax by itself. I mean, Equifax was hacked, and with this being the office that contains your most personal records, I want to make sure that it's secure.
Is there anything in particular you'd want to institute?
Well, like I was talking about, I think that the air gap technology, keeping that original documentation separate from ever being on the internet or ever being live. So I definitely think that's important. I don't understand why we're not up to a PCI compliance in the government when every other corporate entity is going that direction, whether they've done it already or are planning on the future, because then you don't have these cameras and this risk of someone getting your information that way. So those two things, I think, would definitely help secure information better.
Okay. Your priority list also says you'd want to reduce or eliminate fees to stimulate small business growth. What types of fees are we talking about?
Talking about the LLC costs. The LLC costs were recently reduced, yet they are still pretty high compared to other states. They're probably in, I would say, little over the top half. They're still high. So it's made it a little bit easier for business owners. And I'd like to analyze, too, is a lot of people that are doing basic documentation I'm hearing on the website, even though there's now a mobile app, which I do have to commend Mr. White on in making a mobile app, is it's still not easy to get around and contact people. I'd like to make the website, I think, a little bit more user-friendly just by doing things like, I don't know if you remember back in Microsoft's earlier days with the paperclip that would pop up and ask you to help, ask if you needed help on anything. I could see that, like, who to contact with this or that. I just think technology is at the point where there's no reason why this website cannot be updated even further. I don't understand why it can't be. I see a lot of room for improvement there.
Okay. Your campaign website talked about, in particular when you were talking about eliminating fees, commercial driver's licenses.
Yes.
I was curious why you focused on that. I mean, it was the main
Yeah,
example
yeah.
you gave.
I'll bring that up. I'm glad you did bring that up because I haven't talked about it. Yeah, the commercial driver's license, there's a lot of issues with them right now. Illinois is one of those states where you have to get a new CDL when you cross state borders and decide to work there. That's not a motivating factor to bring jobs into Illinois. That's not an environment for truck drivers to want to come here, want to help the economy. And right now, throughout the country, there are shortage on truck drivers. The company that I work with, which does a lot of shipping and receiving of different types of goods, we were having issues with truck shipments and damages and things because they can't keep people on. I don't see anything that would motivate people to come to Illinois that want to be truck drivers. Another thing that I saw on it too, and it's the cost of gas and getting around, is that these places, not every driver services facility can handle CDL licensing and the regulations, is that there needs to be a better look at where these locations are to make them more strategic. And additionally with that, I guess the classroom work that you have to do in Illinois, like the classes and everything that you take, are higher than other states. So all these things kind of factor into a higher CDL cost. And I think we need to look at that and make it so we're bringing business into Illinois and not driving it away.
Would you worry at all? I mean, the Secretary of State's office in part does run on some of the fees it brings in. Would you worry about losing some of these fees? If you're reducing fees, whether it's for CDL license, for LLC?
This is where, and Mr. White has done this to get some of the stuff passed too, is when you show up to the General Assembly, you show up to the Department of Legislative Affairs. They have taken a lot of his suggestions, and of course they haven't taken all the suggestions. But I want to be that guy that if I'm able to reduce the money and expenditures, that I can come back to the General Assembly and say, listen, I saved this much money. It's time to give back to the taxpayers. Don't toss in more grants because I reduced this part of the budget. We don't need more grants that don't pertain to the office. Another thing about the Secretary of State's office in Illinois that people don't know is it actually has more functions and jobs and things that are thrown at it than any comparable office in the United States. So if they can't figure out where to put it with grants and things like that, they make it a responsibility of the Secretary of State.
Is there a particular example that we?
Well, yeah. I mean, you have, like, they were doing at the Capitol building, I'm sure you guys have been in plenty of times, but they have Secretary of State employees that do the tours. You have, the Capitol Police in addition to the Secretary of State Police. There's just so many different areas that I think that could be looked at for this.
Another thing on your campaign website said you would protect civil liberties by adhering to the U.S. and Illinois constitutions. Are there any civil liberties you think are in danger of not being
Yes,
protected?
I do. And my Republican opponent, Mr. Helen, brought this up in our last debate. Is with some of the issues that are. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, just you on your website you said you would work to protect civil liberties by adhering to both the state and the federal constitutions. And so do you think there's civil liberties that are in danger of not being protected right now?
Yes. There is what's considered a textilizer, which is being used in other states, which basically when you're stopped, they can check it and see if you've been texting and driving.
Like something you would put, like a breathalyzer type thing?
Well, no, it's actually tests your phone. When a cop pulls you over and thinks you're texting and driving, they can check your cell phone, which violates the Constitution because it could be your child using it. It could be anyone in the car using it. And Mr. Helen wants to put some kind of technology so that you could penalize someone by looking at their phone to tell if they've been using it while driving. And I definitely think that's could be entrapment. It's obviously against your civil liberties. Another thing too is I see kind of random demands for proof of insurance going out to people across the state. And of course, it always seems to be driven when they're trying to bring in revenue. So people that otherwise, they're not doing anything wrong, there's no need to investigate them, are all of a sudden getting things demanding their proof of insurance. And I kind of question the timing on it, because it always seems right when there's going to be a budget impasse that they start doing these random letters. So I'd like to see it more of a basis if there was some reason to ask for their proof of insurance, just not out of the blue.
Okay. We talked a little bit about the amount of records that the Secretary of State's office keeps. A lot of those are private, but some of those are also they're public records.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So how would you work to ensure the office is run in a transparent manner and that the public has access to public documents?
Yeah, I want to make it so that the public documents are more visible. That has to do with the technology upgrade, the website upgrade. They have that little mini search engine where you type in something simple to find something, and then it just guides you there instead of having to go from page to page or figure out what department it belongs to, because there's over 20 departments in the Secretary of State's office. So it can get very confusing. And I was just at the nursing home, actually just visiting my grandma the other day, and someone had mentioned there that one of the elderly ladies that was going out had mentioned that it was very difficult for her to get around on the site. So I thought that was kind of funny and cute, and I talked to her, and she's like, yeah, for someone that's old like me, I would like to make it so it's a little bit easier. I'm not too familiar with technology. So I think just making it so it's more user-friendly will definitely be a benefit.
As you noted, there's 20 departments in the Secretary of State's office. I think most people identify with just driving primarily, but it's also in charge of the state library.
Mm-hmm.
Libraries are considered, I'd argue, the great equalizer in our society.
Yes.
How would you, as Secretary of State, ensure our libraries have the resources needed to fulfill that mission?
Sure. It's something that both my opponents really haven't mentioned. Yeah, there are 2 state libraries, and I believe that we could open up more internship programs, which will help with jobs. My policy director that works with me, she actually has a degree in library science, and she does a lot of archiving and research for people through there. And she sees a lot of opportunity for library students or other students to get a start working in a library as an intern. I believe that it'll open up more jobs in the future for them on these internships. I also think that we need to reach more out, and this will help on 2 ends, is that we need to also expand the library services, I think, more into the prison systems. This will help with people get experience for teaching reading and reading to people and basic English and stuff. And it also, I believe, help the recidivism rate in Illinois, because there are so many prisoners that get out with like a 4th grade reading level, and then they go back in because they don't necessarily have the skills. And I think it's very important that we look at, once you've done your time, to be able to be another person in society and go back and contribute to society. And I think that's something else that we could broaden the library services into, is the prison system.
Okay. One of the things that has been brought up regarding Jesse White, the current holder of this office, is how long he's been in office.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be in favor of term limits for this
Yes,
office?
I am definitely in term
Talk to
limits.
us about which offices, how long.
I'm in term limits. I believe in term limits for all offices. I don't think any office personally should go above 8 years. 8 years, I believe, is a good time for a term limit. Now, my
just statewide constitutional.
yeah, statewide constitution.
Or
yeah,
also the legislature.
I would also see the legislator. Yeah, because you have people in the office for their entire lives, and we need to set term limits for that. So yeah, that's a big issue with me. One of the things that my opponent had mentioned is they asked him if he had a problem with Mr. White's age, and he came out right away and said absolutely. And he repeatedly attacks his age rather than the amount of time he's in office. I don't have a problem with his age at all. I find that as I've mentioned in other articles, a form of ageism. I have a problem with the amount of time he's been in office and wanting to do something different. I want to see it go into the 21st century, and I don't think we've made that step. So my issue with Mr. White is not his age; it's the amount of time that he's been in office and ideas that I think need to be tried.
Well, we thank you for meeting with us today, and we invite you to give a closing statement as to why you should be the next Secretary of State?
Sure. As a libertarian, I have unique ideas that typically aren't brought up by Republicans or Democrats. I've looked at other states to see what's been done in the Driver Services Department and the Secretary of State's office, and I've gathered a lot of new ideas. With it now being deep into the 21st century, I think that we could improve technology, protect identity theft. Why doesn't Illinois look at things like privatizing driver services? Are we really concerned about identity theft? We need to take a look at all these things, and I think I offer a perspective that hasn't been brought to Illinois before, and I think that this could be a change that the people would be happy with seeing.